Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast. One of the hosts pronounces it Kamari Lassiter. That's Lenny. I mean, it Kimes. That wasn't great, but Kamari Lassiter is one of the players, a very good player, on one of the teams we are talking about today because we made it, folks. We were at the final division preview. The AFC South saved best. Best feels a little strong. Saved a division for last purposefully because I wanted this Colts quarterback battle to play out. Finally, just in time, it did, which is good. I am joined by my friend. He's been on the show before. He's a former NFL scout. He's writing about the draft and other things for A to Z Sports. Brentley Weissman, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Mina. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't use best to describe this division, but perhaps most interesting. I think there's a lot of good storylines, a lot of kind of high variance teams that we're going to talk about today. So appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, it is interesting. I genuinely believe that. We got into the Colts quarterback battle at length earlier this week with Ben Solak. You and I will talk about that. But there's other things with the Colts that I find really interesting. The Jags, new coaching staff. That is fascinating. They have maybe the most interesting player in football in Travis Hunter. Titans have the number one overall pick at quarterback, who's been honestly really fun to watch in the preseason. But I thought we would start with the division winners, the big bads of the AFC South, the Houston Texans. I've been doing these like power rankings I'm done with them now, but I was surprised by how high people had the Texans. Maybe a little surprised. Before we dive into it, like it does feel like national sentiment is once again really high, which is I think what happens when you win a playoff game. So everybody's last memory of the Texans is CJ Stroud looking like rookie season CJ Stroud and less like the guy we saw through much of the year. I do believe they are the favorites for a reason, but
Yeah.
I also have a lot of questions about this offense, Brentley.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. I mean, I thought they were really good last year. Obviously, beat the Chargers in the playoff game. Competed well against the Chiefs. I thought there's a lot to like. Obviously, they have a new offensive coordinator. I'm sure we'll dive into that. But I think the offense took a step back in 2024. Obviously, a big part of that is because the offensive line. My biggest concern for this offense is did they do enough to fix the offensive line? I'm not quite sure about that. There's some pieces I like, but yeah, I think if the offensive line doesn't take a big next step, I'm not sure this offense is going to be that much more different than what we saw last year.
So we should just start there because that is the entire question here. They were also obviously injured at wide receiver, so they went out and they drafted two receivers from the same, which is really funny approach. I feel like in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. And it was a funny approach too because I felt like, and then they signed Christian Kirk, right? Who is so your 1-2 is Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. It felt like they just drafted like Nico Collins light and Christian Kirk. Like I think
exactly.
Hey, I actually think Noel could be even better than Christian Kirk. Potentially, I'm excited about it. But it felt like they were just like, let's just get depth here for these receivers. And then Joe Mixon's hurt. They added Nick Chubb. That's a bit dubious. But the line is the big question. And I think what I want to talk to you about. So first of all, let's talk about how bad the line was before we get to this because they've made a lot of changes with the line. Last year. Just pulling some stats. CJ Stroud faced the fourth highest quick pressure rate amongst all quarterbacks. The Texans offensive line, this is from Next Gen Stats, allowed 52 unblocked pressures, just completely unblocked, which was the second most behind Caleb Williams. It was a line that really struggled with picking up stunts, identifying where pressure was coming from. It felt like a failure of both talent and coaching. So the bet they seem to be making is that if they just reshuffle the talent and bring in completely new coaching staff here, that it'll be better. Right now, I am actually not sure what the starting lineup is going to look like. I asked DJ Bieniemy, who does a terrific job covering the Texans for us, and he said it really comes down to whether Cam Robinson is out there at left tackle. If he's out there, he said he thinks it'll be Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson. Jake Andrews, Titus Howard playing guard again, and then
Mhm.
Arante Ursary, who people really
Yeah.
liked,
Yeah.
the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. Okay. How are we feeling? Like, can talent can no, not talent. So the new coordinator, Nick Caley, is bringing a very different offense.
Yeah.
Can he fix this?
I think
'Cause on paper, I do not think these are very good players. I just wanna say that. I do not like the talent. I don't like the choices that they made.
yeah, and that's really kind of where I landed. Like in prepping for this pod, I was like, this offensive line sucked last year, and on paper, it still sucks. Like I don't see where the talent is. I do like Ariante Ursary. He's playing left tackle for them during preseason. I think he's playing really well. I think that he's arguably their best player, even as a rookie. So I think that's good for them. But you mentioned, the straight up whiffs, the mental errors, the failing to pick up stunts in games and blitzes. That is a coaching failure, and I think that directly led to Bobby Slowick, the former offensive coordinator, getting fired last year. I heard, I forget, might have been on Nate Tice's podcast. They do a great job, but CJ Stroud in this new scheme with Nick Caley,
Yeah.
he's going to get more kind of pre-snap responsibility. He's going to get more freedom at the line of scrimmage, being able to get the offensive line in the right protections. Because with Bobby Slowick, that all came from him in the center. And so I think if CJ Stroud, who we all think is really smart, very
Yeah.
cerebral, if he can be that guy to be able to get the blocking right up front pre-snap, I think that will help mitigate a lot of the flat out whiffs. Because I mean, oftentimes people were coming in free rush, not even touched. So
Mhm.
that's not even a talent standpoint. That's a straight up mental error standpoint. So if CJ Stroud can make that difference and be that cerebral, smart quarterback before the ball's even snapped, that is going to help. But yeah, in terms of a talent standpoint, I don't know if they really upgraded from last year, and that to
Yeah.
me is really, really concerning.
I I'm glad you brought up Stroud because it is, to me, it's a bet on Stroud and also I think scheme to
Yeah,
help them out. And like, Bobby I mean, there were a lot of issues last year. A couple things that jumped out to me. The Texans, they're not a good rushing team at all, right? They ran the ball at the third highest rate on 2nd and 5 or longer, and yet averaged 26 in yards per carry. So CJ was tied for the third most in yards to go on third down, which allowed obviously pass rushes to get after it. There was no quick game in this offense, despite the fact that the line sucked. Stroud was 31st in short passes from FTN, 30th in quick throws, 29th in yards after the catch as a percentage. Again, that's not all on Slowick. Some of it is Stroud as well, but it felt like it was like a 5 alarm fire that they were just letting burn and
yeah,
then sometimes making worse. So I think for Houston, the optimist case is they cannot be that poorly coached. The scheme cannot be that bad. Kaylee's an interesting one because he was last with the Rams where he coached
yeah.
tight ends, but before that he was with New
He's a
England.
Patriot guy.
Yeah, so I think like what the offense actually looks like, I don't think it's going to be like pure what we think of Sean McVay per se. DJ did mention to me they're trying to switch to more, duo
Yeah.
runs. It's not going to just be the outside zone of Bobby Slowick. So I think like where I come down, Brentley, is like I think it's going to be better, but I also don't believe the line is good enough to where I feel like they can be a top 10 powerhouse off. I still feel like it's going to hold them back to some degree.
Yeah, I think it has to, right? I mean, again, the talent is the talent, and coaching can only go, so much. Scheme can only go so much. At the end of the day, they have to line up against the Colts defensive line, which we'll talk about, the Jaguars pass rushers, which we'll talk about. I mean, those are two units that can get home to the quarterback, and so that I think that is going to be an issue. I do think the running game being better, hopefully, this year with a new running scheme. You mentioned more gap, more duo. I think that will help get the Texans more on schedule early in the drives. Try to avoid third and long because I think they were sacked the most of any team on third and long, as you can imagine. So trying to stay in that third and manageable, 2nd and 3 kind of on schedule, that will help. That will help mitigate, disaster. Because I think a lot of the times last year, is they weren't just sacks, they were disaster sacks on the worst possible time during the drive. And so, yeah, look, there's a lot I love about this offense. We'll dive into the skill players. I mean, obviously Nico Collins is, if
Okay.
not a top 4, a top 6 receiver in the league, right? And I
So good.
love the two rookies from Iowa State, Jaden Knoll and Jaden Higgins. I mean, those two are phenomenal. And then Christian Kirk. But if Stroud doesn't have time to get the ball off to the weapons, like that is going to be a concern. So I think this offense is going to be good. I don't think there's going to be too much to worry about, but there is a ceiling. And again, that's totally going to be up on the offensive line.
Um, the Kirk signing, I do like a lot. I mentioned earlier that the Texans last year were like bottom 3 in quick game, short passes, yards after the catch. I think like that the absence of Tank Dell, or when
Yeah.
he came back and was really hurt, we think of him downfield on the deep balls, but I actually think it was really felt in getting the ball out quickly and getting yards after the catch. So I really like bringing in Kirk, who's a really interesting player, because he's a slot who can win downfield. He can beat man coverage, but he can also give Stroud a quick, easy answer underneath. I really liked that signing. And then I love that you hedge that with
Yeah.
Jalen Noel. Jalen Noel was such a fun player to watch. And he really, like, it really did feel like they just brought in the replicants, which is such an interesting strategy. But I do think, like we talk about coaching helping the offensive line, I also think the types of skill players that they added could also help pass protection lapses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Christian Kirk is just a quarterback, just best friend, right? His ability to separate against man versus zone, make himself open on those kind of third and medium kind of plays. CJ Stroud's got to love him. I think he's going to have a great year with Stroud. But you mentioned it. Jalen Knowles essentially Christian Kirk, but with a jetpack. Jalen Knowles is so explosive. I think it won't be long until he works his way into the rotation. And then Jaden Higgins. I mean, yeah, he's a Nico Collins light. I think being able to kind of move those players around the line of scrimmage,
Yeah.
because I think Nico Collins, yes, he wins at X, predominantly outside. He could be moved around. You can put him in the slot. You could put him kind of
Yeah.
at Z and do a bunch of fun things with Nico Collins. And now that you have a talent like Jaden Higgins that complements him and they can be on the field at the same time, I get very excited about what this receiving core can look like.
Yeah.
And then, obviously CJ Stroud is one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. I think he's going to have a great year with these new weapons.
You mentioned, the putting receivers in different alignments, moving them around. That is something I think Nick Haley will
Yeah.
bring with him from the Rams too, and obviously did great work with the slot receiver. The Rams, is very famous for how they use receivers in the slot over the last few years. Yeah, just if the offensive line can just be like 20th, I'll feel okay.
Just average. No, we're not asking for much. Just
Yeah, just
average.
that 15 to 20 range, then I
Yeah.
think this thing can go. The good news is there's two sides of the ball, and they're going to be helped by a defense that I ranked second. So I did the top 10 defenses pod. I had them right behind Denver, but it was very close for me. Like, how do you feel about that ranking, and how do you feel about this unit as a whole?
You know what this defense reminds me of? It reminds me of the 2015 Broncos. Of just
Okay,
how they're
the Super Bowl
built.
defense.
Yeah, just how they're built in terms of this edge rushing group is phenomenal. I mean,
Mm.
they go 5 deep. You have Will Anderson Jr., who I think is a dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year this
Yeah,
year.
I
Like
like that
he
pick.
came on so strong in the playoffs, and he's a game wrecker. You have Daniil Hunter, who's a top 10 pass rusher in the NFL. They signed Darrell Taylor from Chicago, Derek Barnett from Philly. I mean, they just have uh, Rolodex of edge rushers they can roll out there. So I love them from a pass rushing standpoint. And then from a secondary standpoint, just junkyard dogs. I mean, it's ridiculous. The amount of swagger, personality they have in the secondary, just so aggressive. You have Derek Stingley, who arguably the second, third best corner in the NFL. Kamari Lassiter to me, I mean, my goodness. Was he
I love a corner who hits.
yeah.
He's like a throwback to watch
He,
out there, because like he is like D'Amico Ryans is like soul on the
oh
field.
God, yeah.
Like,
You know he loves the way he plays, up at the line of scrimmage, physical, get in your face, talk crap. I mean, like, I love him from an intangible standpoint, the swagger he brings, but seriously, he was one of the best rookies in the NFL last year. I
Yeah.
feel like no one talked about. So him and Stingley to me are one of the best corner duos in the NFL. And then they brought in C.J. Gardner Johnson, who was another just personality and plays with the
Same
temperament and
vibe.
physicality that D'Amico Ryan's like. So I mean, from a coverage and pass rushing standpoint, I'm not sure it gets better in the NFL. I mean, run defense, yeah, could be a little bit of a weakness. I don't love their interior. Tim Settle, Sheldon Rankins, you have Mario Edwards, and even Danico Autry can reduce down. But overall, this is just a fast, violent, aggressive unit. I love it.
Um, they're 26th in age, which is crazy.
That's
Uh,
unreal.
and that's with Daniel Hunter bringing up the average
Yeah,
because he's probably like 30 at this point. I
yeah.
mean, they've just drafted so well, and these young players are. I mean, you mentioned Lassiter, Anderson Jr., Stingley, obviously are the studs, but Kalen Bullock, they feel like they
Hmm.
found another one in him. Yeah, it's so if I had any it's a really, really deep, really, really talented, really, really cool group. If I had concerns, I would say potentially safety. CJ Gardner Johnson has, let me check out on his injury status. He's been banged up. That's an
Yeah,
issue. I know Jimmy Ward had, I believe, like a domestic fight. So there's some kind of
yeah.
incident with him. And then like the linebacker is really like the only question mark on this team with Alshire, who you really saw when he was out, the
Yeah,
impact that
it's
has. And they asked this scheme, the D'Amico Ryan scheme, which is a lot of man coverage, a lot of quarters and man, 4-man rush. You're asking a lot of that second level, right? So I don't, I'm not in love with the depth there. I don't think Christian Harris, I think he's been hurt too.
Yeah,
But
he's been hurt. He's like coming back to practice lately, and I do like Henry To'oTo'o. I thought he did well last year. I don't think he's a star by any means, but I think he's certainly serviceable. But yeah, I mean, Alshire, the splits of him being in and out of the defense are pretty remarkable. He's an important player to this unit.
if I had any concerns, the thing that sits in my mind is watching the Ravens on Christmas and
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson and
yeah.
these the D'Amico Ryan's defense, the Niners too have always had a little bit of an issue with scrambling quarterbacks. Again, I think it's because of the way they play the man quarters. Um, but this is just such a talented unit. They're
Yeah.
so and they're so, it's funny because like so many of the top defenses are so schemed up now. The Eagles, um, the
The
Seahawks,
Ravens, yeah.
the Ravens. These guys just
Line
freaking
it
go.
up.
Yeah, they're just
Line it
this is
up.
just like they're just so talented. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to red zone is another area where I was surprised that they were not very good. They could get better. I think that's where some of the run defense issues probably show up that you alluded to in terms of like the interior, but
Mhm.
damn. I mean, if you have a top 3 2 pass rush and a top 3 secondary,
In this league, I mean, that's
this
all.
is
That's all you want.
what you can
That's
do
what
about
you
it,
want.
yeah.
That is what
Uh,
you want.
Not much to discuss with the Texans defense, honestly. It feels like the offensive line is just like the hole in the Death. I need a new analogy because I always use the hole in the Death Star, but like it is like the one thing, right? That's what happened last year.
Yeah.
And I think what was such a bummer last year is you really saw it affect Stroud as the year went on. We talk he finished strong, and I think that's what everybody remembers. But whew, I mean, again, to go back to that Christmas game, you I believe like you saw him just missing throws that he hits, some of those outs, inaccuracy, and I really believe that's not who CJ Stroud is. I really think it was because of the pressure and it just affecting the entire operation. Let's hope, man.
Yeah.
I
I think
mean,
because CJ Stroud's never really played under that kind of pressure, right? At Ohio State, he had great
mm,
offensive lines. Even as a rookie, the offensive line, which is strange enough because it was the same personnel, was a lot better his first year. And so I think there's an adjustment, understanding how to kind of speed up your process, speed up your clock. And yeah, I mean, it took time. I thought he played better towards the end of the year. And I think heading into this next year with, again, hopefully better production from his linemen, I think even if he doesn't see that production up front, he individually will be better able to kind of play through that pressure because he kind of experienced it last year.
Yeah, I like that. I'm optimistic, but very cautiously so.
Yeah,
I just wish they got better players.
me
Just
too.
like, dude, Ed Ingram, really? Okay, the Colts made things easier for us because we now know who is starting at quarterback. Who knows how long? Although I think Stage Ike instead he's going to give him a long leash. Daniel Jones. This is a Daniel Jones helmed offense. Pretty similar to the unit last year. Not that many changes, most notably on the interior of the offensive line. Tanner Bortolini
Yeah,
is center, but he played some Matt Salvez is guard. It's because the Vikings just yoinked their
literally
interior.
took Will Fries and Ryan
Yeah,
Kelly.
and
Yeah,
Ryan Kelly.
little
Yeah,
trade. Yeah,
yeah. Braden Smith is back in the mix. He missed some
yeah,
games with anxiety issues. Or I'm actually he had like OCD. It was actually crazy to read about
yeah.
anyway. But he's back. Otherwise, the biggest addition, of course, is Tyler Warren, who I've been very excited watching in the preseason. But let's start with Daniel Jones. Let's just start with the offense.
Yeah.
What does a Daniel Jones offense look like with this group in 2025? Like, what are your expectations for how this is going to look and feel?
A lot of RPOs, a lot of quick game, a lot of short to intermediate passes.
Alec
Um,
Pierce,
Alex Pierce, he's literally just been
poor
doing
guy,
cardio.
trade him.
He's
Yeah,
doing cardio out there. I think
poor guy.
yeah, for fantasy, hopefully my friends don't watch. They're gonna know what I'm gonna do. But yeah,
Yeah,
draft Tyler Warren,
Josh Downs
draft
to
Josh
the
Downs.
moon.
Yeah, I think it's a bummer. You know, we were talking yesterday. I love their skill players. I really do. I think Alec Pierce is one of the best deep ball receivers in the NFL. I love Michael Pittman. Adonai Mitchell, I remember I was on your pod, you know, before the draft. Like I was singing his praises. I love Adonai Mitchell, and I think
Frustrating.
yeah, by
He's
all
so
reports,
frustrating.
I know by all reports he's having a good offseason. But now with Daniel Jones, like all of those really talented receivers are kind of gonna get wasted. You know, I think we're gonna see a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor, which is not a bad thing. You know, I was kind of surprised to see he had the third most yards per game rushing last year. So I feel
Yeah.
like that was like a really surprising stat.
So I think that's a big part of why they went with Jones. I was
Yeah.
going back and forth with I think it's Zach Hicks. He covers the Colts about
Yeah.
this. Like, why did they choose Daniel Jones as the competitor for Anthony Richardson? And I think like last year they really saw when Richardson was out and Flacco was in how much the run game suffered. Ultimately, like to your point, they finished 10th in rushing DVOA.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a really good running team. But I think the run game is really it's not entirely predicated, but it really helps for them to have a quarterback who changes the numbers and creates some conflict. And like, look, Daniel Jones can do that, man. Like the dream for Colts fans, I mean, this isn't the dream, but like when we think back to Daniel Jones' best season in the NFL in New York, the year that they went to the playoffs, he was really good running the football.
Yeah.
So much zone reads, so much designed runs. I have to think, in addition to the RPOs, that's going to be a big part of this. And that their hope is that we're going to be a run first team. We have a quarterback who's a really good athlete. He's not Anthony Richardson out there, but he's a really good athlete. Let's just lead that way. I think where I get worried, Brentley, is the unwillingness. It is unwillingness to push the ball downfield. Defenses are just going to
Oh
play
yeah.
them I mean, they're just going to dare him to throw downfield because um, Tyler Warren, I mean, he looks amazing after the catch. I love Josh Downs. That dude catches everything. But if the space is so constricted, it's going to get really difficult for them to string together long drives.
Yeah, I mean, Steichen's going to have to be in Jones' ear and tell him to take some few manufactured deep shots per game just to loosen up the box. Because to your point, yeah, if I'm a defensive coordinator playing the Colts, I'm loading the box and daring them to throw deep because Daniel Jones has proven he can't do it, you know? And so I
Mhm.
think that's certainly going to be an issue. I think, again, in terms of personnel, they have the weapons to throw deep and get deep and win vertically. But is Jones willing to pull the trigger? I don't know. I think, you know, in terms of picking Jones over Richardson, Jones theoretically can just go through progressions, right? And get through the offense, get to 1, 2, 3, ball out, take the check down. And for Steichen, I think that's all he's looking for. You know, I think
Yeah.
he was tired of the just mental errors, the not going through the right reads, all of those things that we know drives the head coach crazy. even if it limits the ceiling of this offense, I think Steichen and co are willing to kind of deal with that as long as they can just kind of have the floor, which we can argue to we're blue in the face, but kind of is what it is. I think this certainly this offense is going to have a pretty big, pretty big ceiling over it.
Yeah, I think to your point, the two things you really need to accomplish to at least make this average, he's got to be willing to push the ball downfield, throw to Alec Pierce, just a couple times a game. And then he's got to avoid really bad sacks.
Yeah.
This is something that he has struggled with sometimes, just the lack of pocket presence. How many times in New York did we just see Daniel Jones completely? It's funny because that's ultimately, I think, what doomed Richardson is not saying the pressure coming,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, but
National TV.
if there's too many negative plays with him holding onto the football, not sensing pressure, maybe giving up some fumbles, which is something he's had issues with at that point. That's where I think like the premise of him being a floor raiser falls apart, where it's like, well, is he really raising the floor if he's not? He's
Yeah.
taking a ton of sacks. Um, but yeah, I don't hate what it does for like Pittman Jr.'s your intermediate guy for the most part. I mentioned Downs. Yeah, Downs is just so great. He's so efficient. And Tyler Warren, like, whew. I mean, let's just a little positivity before we switch to the defense here. I've loved the way he has looked in the
Oh
preseason. Like,
yeah. I mean,
do
he's
we all like people
unstoppable.
really overthought this? Is this I mean, again, it's the preseason, so we'll see, but like he looks like he did in college, which is to say a guy who just like has the ability to take over football games.
I don't know how he lasted to pick 14, honestly. Like, I mean, the fact that and I like Loveland from who the Bears got, I like him, but to me, it was very clear that Tyler Warren was the number one tight end. I think I had him as a top 5 player in the whole draft. I mean, he's looks amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him kind of be that also the wildcat, not wildcat, but the what do you call it, the tush push
Mm,
with him on our center because like he did some of that at Penn State. But I do think to end on positivity, this is probably the most talent Jones has had around him in his career. From
yeah,
an offensive
good
line
point.
standpoint, like I
Yeah.
love Bernard Raymond. Braden Smith is a good right tackle. You have Q Nelson. I'm a big fan of Tanner Bortolini coming out of Wisconsin, very athletic. I thought he played well last year, and so I think again, what we've seen from Daniel Jones hasn't been great, but also his surroundings weren't good either.
It's a good point.
And so I think there's a chance that we do see the best version of Daniel Jones in this system. And I love Shane Steichen. I was with him in the Chargers. I don't think he's a bad coach. I'm seeing people saying he's on the hot seat, he should get fired. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think he maybe isn't the issue here. I think Chris Ballard is the issue. He's escaped death way too many times for my liking. He should be gone. But I think Daniel Jones, there could be a path for him to being productive in this offense and maybe having a mini, not quite Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield turnaround, but I could see at the end of the year where there's like, hey, you know what? That wasn't that bad. Like, that was actually pretty good.
I think it could look like it did in New York when he had the good
Yeah.
season, which was good enough. They went to the
Yeah.
playoffs. That premise for me also rests on the defense taking another leap, which is possible. I'm
Yeah.
looking at this group, and so the last year they finished 14th versus the run, 22nd versus the pass. They changed defensive coordinators, and what I think is going to be one of the more interesting coordinator changes. You go from the Gus Bradley defense, very, very cover three centric, blitz a lot. You bring in Lou Anarumo from Cincinnati. But they don't just bring in Lou Anarumo, they give him some talent
Yeah.
additions on the back end, which I think is really interesting. They signed Travarius Ward and Cam Bynum. So, I think Lou at the end of his time in Cincinnati really struggled to develop some of the younger players and they struggled to run his defense. I like that they said, all right, let's get, which is kind of uncharacteristic of the Colts under Chris Ballard. Let's
Yeah.
actually sign some. I really like both Ward, who had a down year last year, but he was dealing with off the field
Crazy.
death
Yeah.
of his daughter, really horrible. The year before, he was fantastic. Cam Bynum, I think, is one of the better free safeties in the league. Up front, interesting. Again, an interesting group. I want to actually hear your thoughts on this because I know you're so dialed into the draft because you've got some youngsters now. So on the inside, you have the ageless DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart duo who are just going to be good forever, in my opinion. But on the outside, we have Samson Ebukam coming back. Lautu Latu, year 2, Kwity Paye. They drafted JT Tuimoloau,
Mhm.
I think I'm saying his name right, at Ohio State. What do you think of this group of pass rushers? Because, last season, I would say they were about average getting after the quarterback. Like, do you think this has the potential to be a strength in this team?
I think it could be a strength depending on Leatu Latu's jump from year one to year two. He was my number one pass rusher coming out of the draft that year, just above Jared Verse. But one of the things that Latu I thought struggled with last year was just his overall power and strength. I love what I saw from his get off, from his ability to win with hands and kind of clear the tackle's length and things like that. But I think he needed to get stronger with his kind of first full offseason in the NFL. And I think if he did, there's a big opportunity for him to take a year one to year two jump. Kwity Paye, I like him a lot. I think he's entering a contract year, so he'll be motivated to perform. I just haven't seen the twitch and the power and the explosiveness that I
Yeah.
saw coming out of Michigan. And I do like JT Tuimoloau. I'm a big fan of him. I thought in the second round, that's a good value. I think he kind of got overshadowed in an extremely talented Buckeye defense. I think he is a player that Chris Ballard certainly is going to value both from a run defending standpoint, but also from a getting after the quarterback standpoint. So I do think this edge rushing group has potential, but the only player that I feel really strong about maybe being from making a leap from a solid to like a really plus starter is Latu. And that again, that is kind of up in the air. We need to see him take
Yeah.
that jump.
Yeah, I mentioned this when they, hired Lou, but no, I was talking to Greg Rosenthal about Latu being, like, kind of the most important player on the
Yeah.
team quietly.
I mean, literally.
Um, he reminded me a little bit of Trey Hendrickson, who is obviously a player that Lou knows very well, uh, coming out of the draft. Now that's a lofty comp because we know what Trey Hendrickson has become. And I'm not saying he's going to be him or even that he has to be him for this defense to be good, but I feel like to your point, he is absolutely the guy that I'm looking at. If he can step up and become a double digit sacks guy,
Yeah.
I feel pretty comfortable with the additions that they've made on the back end that this could be a certainly above average defense.
Yeah, I mean, because what that would do is, I mean, if Latu is becoming that presence on the edge, that's going to leave more one on ones for DeForest Buckner, who people can't block one on one as a three tech. That's impossible, So I think if they can free up and get some actual just four down pressure, not blitzing, just with their fourth and down
Yeah.
defensive linemen, that will go a long way into helping this defense.
Buckner, I mentioned this when Zach Allen got his deal signed, was second in pass rush win last year behind
Unreal.
Chris Jones. People were surprised by that. They're like, "Well, DeForest Buckner? That dude, he's still so good." He's just
Yeah.
I feel like he has been good every single season he's played in the NFL. There's like there's certain players like that who we just like kind of stop thinking about them maybe because they're not on like superstar teams or playoffs or whatever, or they're just kind of quieter profiles. But like him and Grover Stewart to me, who's like immovable, they're just like the most reliable duo inside in the league. So yeah, all you need is like you're gonna have one-on-ones. You're gonna have opportunities to get after the quarterback. Just can one of these guys? The Colts have like they before Latu, you mentioned Pay, you remember Odingbo, they drafted so
Mhm.
many athletes. Latu's a little bit more of the technician,
Exactly.
different profile, but because yeah, I linebacker, a little bit of question next to Zaire Franklin. Corner opposite Ward, probably Jalen Jones. They've been banged up back there, which is a
They
little
signed Xavier
concerning.
Howard, which is interesting. I don't think
Saw
he
that.
played last year, but
Yeah.
he's still, you know, I think he played with Lou Anarumo. I think they were in Miami together. I mean, so there's some familiarity there, and obviously he has ball skills. I mean, I don't know if he'll be something. I think they released their depth chart. They have him as a starter opposite Ward, so we'll see. I mean, I think there's talent on this defense. I saw a stat they led the league in missed tackles last year, which is really
Mm.
interesting. Especially when that Gus
Hmm.
Bradley cover three, where there's a lot of
Yeah.
just kind of allowing passes in front of them, and you kind of make the tackle. So I think with Lou Anarumo, I hope some of that gets cleaned up. But yeah, I mean, Lou Anarumo from Gus Bradley is a huge upgrade, and I like Gus as a person, but Lou Anarumo's ability to do multiple things in coverage and do exotic kind of looks. Like that's going to play really well with this really talented safety duo that I'm a big fan of, and Nick Cross and Cam
Yeah.
Bynum. Like I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about. I think this is a really talented defense. Maybe lacking the quote unquote star power like the Texans, but I think from top down, there's a lot to like.
Yeah, it is, as I mentioned last year, they were kinda, like, just below average. I
Yeah.
don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that they jump into the next tier. Um, but again, Latu to me is the guy. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and talk about a team that I think is one of the most interesting teams in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, we are back. Jacksonville Jaguars, new head coach, new coordinators, new hybrid offensive defensive player. Lot to discuss here. I want to start with Trevor Lawrence, though. One of the more divisive players in football, I feel like. Got the big contract, had a down season. Injuries also didn't play the entire season. He's been struggling now with injuries for 2 years since the year that Jacksonville went to the playoffs and had the comeback against LA. Let's talk about what went wrong last year because I think that'll help us talk about what can go right and whether it can be fixed. Watching Trevor Lawrence in 2024, um, few things jump out to me. Decision making issue, been
Yep.
an issue at times throughout his career. Um, One thing that he really struggled with, and this showed up in the stats, was making plays outside of structure, throwing on the run, which is weird because he's
He's
really
athletic.
athletic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he was 32nd in QBR outside the pocket with a QBR of 2. He was actually a 14th inside. And he wasn't throwing interceptions, he wasn't taking a lot of sacks, just was not making plays. He was much better against zone than man, which a lot of that reflects the receivers usually outside of BTJ. And he did struggle a bit against the blitz and under pressure.
Yeah.
What was your take on his 2024 and where do you think he can slash needs to get better?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence just was not an enjoyable watch last year. It's like,
The
I
whole
mean,
Jags, I mean, they were
just
also
weird
clearly
vibes.
like, "Screw the
Yeah,
season, screw the
yeah.
head coach, we're all
I,
out."
I think the coach obviously lost faith in Trevor Lawrence, and I think that really
Yeah,
trickled down to the whole organization. Um, Lawrence has flashes. I think his whole career has just been flashes and inconsistency. One down, he's throwing a remarkable, uh, you know, 9 ball to BTJ down the field, and it's like, wow, like you see the talent that made him one of the highest ranked prospects coming out of NFL draft history, and then the next, you see him just completely make a crazy mistake on third down because he didn't see the blitz or fail to read the proper coverage, and so I think with bringing in Liam Cohen, one of the things I hope that it limits is Trevor Lawrence's need or desire to always play hero ball. He needs to understand that there's checks and there's answers in the offense that Liam Cohen's going to give you. One of the things that Liam Cohen does so well at Tampa, and what I'm really excited about this offense, a lot of condensed splits, a lot of motions. That's going to be able to tell Trevor Lawrence
yeah,
pre-snap kind of where to go with the football. He's not going to have to think so much, right? He can play kind of free. You have two excellent receivers in BTJ and then Travis Hunter. Like, play within yourself, play within the offense. You have the talent. Let's play more under control. Take the check down, take some screens. Let's, let's kind of play smarter. And so I think that if he does that, he has all the physical talent in the
yeah.
world. He can make every throw. Like that's not the issue with Lawrence. It's play more control, play more in structure, and I think Liam Cohen will be able to do that.
Yeah, the Jags were 32nd in use of motion last year. Cohen with Tampa was 6th. You mentioned the screen game. I think that's gonna be such an important part of this whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
Especially because I do have still very serious questions about this Jags offensive line, which we can talk about. But in Tampa, I mean, that was the best screen game in the NFL. According to FTN's data, they were first in EPA per play on screens by like a large margin. They averaged 8.1 yards per attempt. And it's a different group of players, but let me tell you, Travis Hunter on those screens in college, I mean, whew, good lord,
Monster.
that dude is
Absolute
unbelievable.
monster. Yeah.
So I think just getting the ball out quick, which is another thing that Cohen did really well with Baker. He brought down his time to throw, all the short stuff. Trevor, when the ball comes out quick, it does look good. You saw that a couple of years ago
Yeah.
during the great season he had in 2022. So that's huge. I like this group of skill players. You mentioned obviously BTJ is a stud. Travis Hunter is awesome. Diami Brown as a deep threat, I think, is an
Hmm.
interesting addition. Um, to me, it's just a matter of like similar to the Texans. Can the offensive line just be average-ish? And if they're not, can the play caller mitigate that? Because Cohen coming from Tampa, he's not bringing that offensive line with him.
No.
That
He
was
tried.
one.
I mean,
Right.
Robert Hainsey, I mean, it's not quite Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, they sign Patrick McCarry to play
Yeah.
guard. He's okay, but it's the same tackle duo. They're not terrible, but
No.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
The run game is interesting
Yeah.
because so again, that's another thing that's not coming with him. Well, I do think he tried in drafting Rachel Tootin, by the way, who
Yeah.
we can talk about. But your boy Bucky. Whew.
Yeah.
So Tank Bigsby is just much better than ETN at this point. Bigsby ninth in rushing yards over expected per carry league wide, which is the stat that looks at how much is a running back doing on his own, basically. ETN was 38th last year. I think he can be a part of the screen game. He can be a pass catcher, kind of the Rashad White role, but it's Bigsby and then Bashal Tootin, who they drafted this year. I feel like the run game has to flow through them primarily.
Yeah. I'm torn, because I have a soft spot for ETN. I think some of the things he does, just from being able to break long runs, home run ability, his speed and explosiveness, I think there's room for him in that offense because he's much more explosive than Bigsby too, and he's also really explosive as well. So I think there's a room for ETN, but yeah, to your point, I think Baseball too and could be the next Bucky Irving in terms of like fourth round, fifth round rookie, no one's even heard about really, and all of a sudden come week 6, he's balling. Like I think he has that kind of talent. He can run inside outside, really explosive. So I like him as a kind of one of those under the radar sleepers. But yeah, I think Liam Cohen, what he did so well in Tampa, and again, not different offensive line, no Bucky Irving, etc. But he improved Tampa's running game. I think they were last in
Yeah.
2023, and I think they were fourth last year. Like that's a drastic, just year over year improvement, and I think that also went along with helping Baker Mayfield. So if the Jags' run game takes that next step, like that's going to help Trevor Lawrence stay ahead of schedule, avoid third and longs. Like that's awesome. Offensive line, to your point, interior, they're okay. Robert Hainsey's okay. McCarry at left guard's okay. Ezra Cleveland, just a guy. But tackles, two athletic young tackles that need to take the next step. Point blank period, need to develop. Anton Harrison at right tackle, I like, but it wasn't pretty last year. There was a lot of issues with him last year. And then Walker Little, I think he's serviceable, but certainly this is not a unit that you feel very
Yeah.
strong about, and I think that is certainly a concern.
It's the one thing that's really holding me back from like
Yeah.
really up because I'm so high on Liam Cohen and what he did last year in Tampa. You talked about the improvement in the run game. I thought he was really good at evolving the offense to suit the skill set of his
Yeah.
backs and his linemen. So now can he do that in Jacksonville? They don't have Graham Barton on the inside.
No.
They don't have Tristan Wirfs in this unit. So it's more challenging. I'm interested in the back deployment, different types of runs. Bigsby, I see as being better for sort of the gap type stuff that they ran in Tampa. Tootin is, yeah. I mean, the Bucky Irving feels a little easy because he's small and he's explosive and he's shifty, but like that dude can go. I mean, he was second in college football behind Ashton Genty in yards after contact per carry. He is super explosive.
He's looked good during preseason as well.
He's looked good in the
He's
preseason.
looked good. Like I mean, like he's doing everything that's asked of him. So I think, and again, Coleman has no connection to Bigsby or ETN. I mean, like
Yeah.
ETN could be a trade candidate midseason. He's on an expiring contract. They drafted Tootin in the 4th round. I mean, they could easily get rid of ETN if they so choose. So yeah, he's going to have a lot of opportunity this year.
The Jags defense was one of the, like, great tire fires of
Yeah.
2024. I feel like because the team wasn't competitive at the end, everybody just kinda let it go, but holy smokes, they were bad. Worst pass defense in the NFL, no matter how you slice it, DVOA, 32nd, 25th against the run, um, 32nd in pass rush win, which is what I wanna start with because it's, like, mind-boggling to me
Yeah.
that a defense with Josh Hines Allen and Travon Walker, who, like, look, I understand Travon Walker is they were obviously wrong to pick him over Aiden Hutchinson. He's a good player.
Yeah.
He's not a great player, but he's good. Hines Allen is great. How can you have those pass rushers and still be so bad? Unsurprisingly, they parted ways with their defensive coordinator, Nielsen.
Ryan Nielsen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bring in Anthony Campanile from Green Bay. But I want to start with like what went wrong and like why it was so bad because I think it's like kind of fascinating how bad they were.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ryan Nielsen did an awful job kind of mirroring scheme to the
Yeah.
personnel, right? I think Josh Hines Allen, I think it is. I don't know what
Josh
it
Hines
is.
Allen.
Josh
Yeah,
Hines
yeah, yeah.
Allen. He was playing at 285 last year. They bulked him up to kind of play more of that stand up or kind of on the ball, hat on hat, kind of gap control edge rusher instead of what he's best at is standing on 2 point stance and rushing after the quarterback. So I think already this offseason it's great. He's lost down 20 pounds. He's going to be hunting more. So I expect a bounce back year from him. Trevor Walker, I think he's progressed every year in the NFL. Yeah, he's never going to be your 12 sack candidate kind of guy. Like that's not really his game. That wasn't even his game at Georgia. He's always kind of that explosive run defender, can make a few splash plays, getting the quarterback, but being a high sack guy was never his mo. And I think outside of those two, the lack of depth at edge is
Yeah.
concerning. I like Dwayne Smoot coming over from Buffalo. He's not a bad player, but just looking at this roster, Eric Armstead at his age, he's just not the same guy inside. I think he's already
They were
out
playing
with
him
injury.
outside a
Yeah,
lot too.
yeah.
Last year, I was like, "Oh god, he's your best third." It's like they haven't found the Arden Key
No,
replacement.
and they miss it, and they missed that, and they certainly missed that. And then Mason Smith, I thought had some flashes last year, second round pick at LSU last year. But yeah, just after Josh Hines Allen and Trevon Walker, it's the cup is really bared. There's not a ton to work with.
0 pressure on the inside.
Yeah.
The highest number of pressures they got from a defensive tackle was Devon Hamilton with 16, which was 65th amongst defensive tackles. So he just got nothing. And Nielsen, I mean, he was rotating guys, but there was no creativity up front. I think that's where I'm going to be interested in seeing if Campanile can put a stamp on this because he is a defensive line coach.
Yep.
Can you find ways? You got 2 good edge rushers. Can you find ways to generate more pressure up front? And then on the back end, I mean, it's not great.
No, it's not.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this.
It's not great at all.
Because okay, so I guess the starting corners would be Tyson Campbell, Jarian Jones, who was decent in the slot last year, but then for some reason
They signed
gave a
Jordan
huge.
Lewis.
So now he's playing outside. Jordan Lewis is a good slot. I
Mhm.
don't know how Travis Funter figures into all of this, but I'm not baking in a ton of him. Safety, it's like a mix of Eric Murray,
Eric
Andrew
Murray,
Wingard,
yeah.
Darnell Savage, who I'm out on. Linebacker group outside of Foye, Olakun, you have Devin Lloyd, who was first rounder, who's just not lived up to that. I don't feel super optimistic about this back seven.
Me either. I think from a personnel standpoint, you're hoping Tyson Campbell takes that next step.
Stays
I
healthy.
was and stays healthy. I was reading something. I think Anthony Campan. I'm gonna mess his name. Campanile. He played predominantly zone in Green Bay, which is great. I think the
Oh,
Jags
that's another thing. Oh my god, all the man. What are you doing, dude? They
yeah,
played so
yeah.
much man coverage. They were so bad
I
at
was about
it.
to say the Jags played I think the second least amount of zone in the NFL last year, and I think from a personnel standpoint, Campbell's a good zone corner. Hunter, if and when he rotates in, is a great zone corner. So I think the scheme will fit the personnel better than it did last year. And just I think naturally that should hopefully kind of raise the floor of this unit. But yeah, you don't feel great when you're reading off the names of a guy like Eric Murray, who's just a kind of seasoned vet, Andrew Rigard, just a guy, and the rookie they drafted in the 6th round. I do like Rayon Lane. He could maybe fit in this rotation, but yeah, it's not the best back seven, and definitely gonna have a lot of pressure on your front four to get home, and which we talked about, that's lacking. So defensively, I don't feel great about this team, but hopefully this new defensive coordinator can get the guys playing better as an overall unit.
Yeah, I think if he can just kind of stop the bleeding,
Yeah.
stop some of the big plays, stop putting your defensive backs in difficult positions, and then like find a way to get some pressure. Like it shouldn't be. I think where I come down is like there's definitely holes and there's lack of talent in the back, but it shouldn't be as bad as it looked last year. Also of note, I mean, they just got obliterated by throws to tight ends and running backs. So much trouble covering the middle of the field and number two receivers. Bottom five in DVOA versus all of those. They're bottom five in everything, but
Yeah.
that was a serious problem for them. All right, Tennessee Titans.
Last one, Titans.
Cam Ward. We've gotten a look. So let's start there. What have you thought watching him so far in the preseason? Because he's played a few drives.
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen. I like his demeanor. I think first and foremost, the game doesn't look like it's too big for him. It looks like he belongs as a
Yeah.
franchise quarterback. Like I appreciate that. The arm talent is what we thought it was. I mean, the throw I think last week to Van Jefferson, kind of the deep over. Got to catch that. Like that was a dime. That was beautiful. I like his ability to just let it rip and not being gun shy. Like I think that has been evident. Yeah, I've really kind of been impressed with the overall Cam Ward experience, at least through 2 games in the preseason. It's kind of wild how little press or noise he's getting as a number one overall draft pick. I feel like he's the most kind of under talked about
Yeah.
number one draft pick in the history, and it's obviously because of the whole Shador stuff and all of that
And
whole
it's the
thing.
team, because
And the team,
we're gonna get to
yeah,
this defense. Like,
yeah,
this is not gonna be a good football team. Sorry,
no, it's
I would be
not,
surprised. So I think
yeah.
that's a huge part of why. Like, if Cam Ward had been drafted by a more interesting team, I will say I am more optimistic about this offense
Yeah.
as I kind of have taken time to like think through some of the players that they have and then some of the improvements that they've made. I agree with your assessment of his preseason. He is always going to make this interesting and fun to watch because of his creativity as a
Mhm.
passer, both inside and outside of structure, his aggression. He's just fun. He's going to take chances. He's going to do stuff. Um, and I have mentioned this before, but I think the offensive line is headed in the right direction finally.
Finally.
Like I know people didn't like the Dan Moore Jr. contract, but at least he's competent. And then you get JC Latham playing on the right side was probably better for him. Hopefully the interior, now that you've got Lloyd Cushenberry back, Kevin Zeitler is just like it's just like competent players. I You mentioned the pass that Van Jefferson should have caught. I wish there was like one more receiver. I'm hopeful that Elik Iomener,
He was the guy. Yeah,
yeah, can
I
become
think
that
he
dude.
he has a chance to be their second best receiver. I liked him out of Stanford. I think he's looked good in the preseason. I think he has a chance.
I Sorry to make this about fantasy. I am gonna try to get
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley in every damn league
Yep.
I'm in because
Yep.
oh my god, he's gonna catch so many passes in this
Yep.
offense. And that was cool to see early on in week one when Ridley played that connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because you saw like with Ward too, when the ball comes out fast, Ridley's gonna take advantage of those opportunities downfield. I think about like the deep crosser he
Oh
hit
yeah.
to him, and it looks good. Like I really think this could be a breakout Ridley year, who was obviously in QB hell last
Well,
season.
he's got to get the targets, so that's for sure. If Cam Ward has made one thing clear, he thinks Calvin Ridley's a top 5 receiver in the league, and he's going to treat him as such. I think he's going to just have a huge volume of targets, and I think Calvin Ridley's skill set he's going to be able to cash in on those. He can win at all three levels of the field. Excellent in the quick game, really good with the ball in his hands, outstanding separator against man and zone. Like, I'm a huge Calvin Ridley fan, but yeah, to your point, I don't love it beyond Calvin Ridley. You have Tyler Lockett, who at this point in his career, maybe there's still something left in the tank as a slot receiver, but could be a stretch. Van Jefferson, we know what he is. I think again the player that I do like is Elick Ayomanor,
Yeah.
big, physical, explosive. I think there's a chance he could be that number two guy, but as a rookie, it's kind of asking a lot. So I don't love this team from a receiver standpoint. I do like their tight ends though. I like
Chig.
Chig, Okonkwo, and then Gunnar Helm, the tight
I
end from
liked him.
Texas.
I liked him in the
He's
draft.
looked good.
Yeah.
He's looked good in the
Yeah.
preseason. Like, I think they need to live in 12 personnel and just run the
Agree.
football. 12
Yeah.
personnel, run the football, play action. Let's call it a year.
Helm to me, soft hands,
Yeah.
balanced, he's like a complete tight end. I think like, part of the reason he was drafted where he was and didn't get he's not like a crazy athlete.
No, I think he ran
Um
slow. Yeah.
yeah, but he's just a good player, man. He's just a good football player. And yeah, I do like that pairing. I like your idea of having them in 12 personnel. I think for Ward, and this is obviously a pretty well-known thing about him. You just gotta, it's just pocket presence is kind of gonna be where this year goes. Can he continue to work at getting the ball out? Because it looks so good when it comes out quick. He's got such fun arm talent on the RPOs, sidearms, whatever. Don't bail, don't take bad sacks. He's gonna throw some interceptions. I'm gonna tell you right now. Like
Yeah.
this
Oh, yeah.
dude,
He,
he loves tight window throws. He loves
yeah.
throwing over. He's really good throwing over the middle of the field, by the way. In college, he had a QBR of 95 between the numbers, 52 20-yard plus completions, most of any quarterback between the numbers. Seams, post, digs, loves it. But he's going to get picked in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's going to be a learning experience. Even like there was, I think it was in the first preseason game, he attempted a hole shot. He was a little bit late on. There's going to be lessons. That was almost picked. But I think they've done a better job, certainly than they did with Levis, who was an inferior player, of surrounding him with at least competent NFL players, starting with the offensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Dan Moore. I mean, like, yeah, they overpaid him, but you have to. He's a starting
Yeah,
left tackle. I mean,
totally
like,
agree.
you kind of have to overpay him. And yeah, their offensive line is not going to be as bad as people think. I like the move Latham over to right tackle. I think Skoronski at left guard is only going to get better. I think the theme for the Titans, because I'm in full agreement, I think this team isn't going to win a lot of games. But if they can leave the year feeling good about Cam Ward's development, maybe Elick Ayomanor becoming that number two receiver, Gunnar Helm's progression, and some defensive rookies like Femi Oladejo, like if they can leave the year with those rookies and they feel good about what they've seen on tape, that's a win. That to me is like their expectations. Hey, like we know we're not going to win a lot of games this year. We don't think Cam Ward is going to be like a Jaden Daniels revelation. But if we can see clear, steady growth, steady progression, that's a win. Like that to me is the way I'd be looking at the Tennessee roster.
You mentioned Daniels. I am interested in seeing how much Ward scrambles this year because that was just such a big part of what made that Washington offense, just radically surpass everybody's expectations. Daniels is a guy who wins from the pocket. He's accurate downfield, but the scrambling he made the most scrambles in football last year. It was huge.
You could almost argue that Cam Ward didn't scramble enough at
Yeah.
Miami last year. I feel like he was like, people want to label me as the dual threat. Like I'm going to make it a point to win in the pocket, and he did. But in the league, I agree. I kind of hope he uses his legs more because he's an outstanding athlete.
You and I are both Pac-12 RIP football fans. I mean, Washington Wazoo Cam Ward was unbelievable.
They were hard out. Like they were hard out.
He ran way more earlier in his college career. So I think that is something that it could end up being a floor raiser for him in the NFL. So because he's capable of it, he's absolutely capable of it.
Just ball security as well. You just need to take care of the football. Just don't fumble because that was as an Oregon guy like that. We were always good for one. He was always going to give us one fumble, and so I think he can clean that up. That'd be good for the Titans.
All right. The Titans defense is why I just have trouble getting too optimistic about this team. It is work in progress to say the
Yeah.
least. Last year, 24th against the pass, 16th versus the run. Um, there's some changes. You brought in some players, not that many, but like they just always side these like older vets. I feel like. Um, Up front, you have a good defensive tackle group.
Yeah.
Sebastian
That's the
Joseph Day.
positives.
This is the strength of the unit by
Yeah.
far. Is I would say safety is decent, and then defensive tackle. Sebastian Joseph Day, Devondre Sweat, who I thought was excellent last year, and then of course Jeff Simmons. Edge is not great. You mentioned one of the younger players who we'll get to, but they signed Draymond Jones, who was just not that dude in Seattle. You want him playing inside. I think Arden Key, who we mentioned as being the Jags' missing third edge rusher. They did add Cody Barton to play linebacker, who's fine.
He's okay. Yeah.
But before we get to the back end, like the front seven, do you feel like we talked about Latu being the kind of potential catalyst or X factor? Do you think there's anyone in this group that you feel optimistic about?
I mean, honestly, Arden Key, I think he's probably the player who's done it enough, right? Who's shown it that he can do it. I don't feel great about that, but
Yeah.
it'd probably be him. I do love Femi Oladejo. He's coming out, but he's just way different than Leatu Latu. He's much more of the explosive, long kind of athlete, super raw. I mean, he was a linebacker kind of halfway through the year last year, and then they finally put his hand on the dirt and let him rush the passer. Like, I don't think he's someone in year one that can be trusted on to have a lot of production. And so we're talking about guys like Arden Key and Draymond Jones. I don't love that at all. Like, I don't know where their outside pressure is going to come from. And you lost Harold Landry last in the offseason. He's in the Patriots now. Like, I don't think they properly replaced that level of production.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kind of the onus is going to be on Jeffrey Simmons. I wouldn't be surprised to see Simmons rush more out on the edge, honestly. And I think he's probably their best pass rusher and coming from the interior. So I don't feel great about that. And then you mentioned Cody Barton coming from Denver. Just a guy, he's a good run defender, not really great in coverage, so I don't know how great he's going to be this year. And I don't even know who's starting opposite him. I think they currently have James
Cedric
Williams,
Gray,
Cedric
maybe.
Gray. Yeah. So again,
Yeah.
two younger players who
Yeah.
a little unproven. So I think this front seven, you feel great about the interior. You love Devondre Sweat. You love Jeffrey Simmons, obviously. Sebastian Joseph Day is a good player. But other than that, I don't know where you can really hang your hat and feel good about.
Yeah, it's funny because the back end, I feel kind of the same way where, like, I like these safeties a lot, and
Yeah.
then the corners I do not like. I mean, on
Yeah.
the interior, you have Amani Hooker, who I think has become really a good player. Xavier Woods slash Quandre Diggs, Kelvin Winston Jr.
Yep.
from Penn State, who was injured, but I think was an interesting prospect.
Yeah.
I like that group of safeties. I think
Yeah.
between next to Hooker, they're gonna figure out who's best there, but I do like that. But then the corners are just I mean, right before I think we started recording, L'Jarius Need returned from injury. Hard to know what they're going to get out of him at this point. Jarvis Brownlee, Roger McCreary at nickel, Daryl Baker Jr. It's just not. They just don't have a lot
No,
of talent
yeah.
back then.
Don't have a lot. I mean, Brownlee played okay last year as a rookie, but not you don't feel great about him being your maybe potentially number one corner, depending on if Sneak can stay healthy. Yeah, I mean the Sneak signing has just been such a disaster for them, for this team.
Yeah,
Hopefully he can come back to where the level he was at Kansas City, because he was good. He was a dog with the Chiefs. He would be a massive, massive impact defender for this defense, but I just don't know what the injury he had during last season, the injury he had, or the surgery he had in the offseason with his getting his knee cleaned up. I don't know how you can realistically count on him to play all 17 games. And so, I mean, one injury to this defense, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, honestly, it's going to be an absolute disaster because there's no depth. There's no depth anywhere. Yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be pretty. I feel like for this defense.
yeah. I mean, hand up. I was dead wrong about Snead. I was like, how could Kansas City let him go? He's so amazing in the Super Bowl run, but they were concerned about the knee, I believe,
Yeah,
and it's proven to be a pretty bad signing for Tennessee. We talked earlier. You talked about kind of like building blocks. Look, the Titans clearly focused on the offseason or the offense part of me. They did, like, again, Dan Moore Jr., you can whatever. They wanted Cam Ward to be in a decent situation. And I don't have issues with the way they went about this offseason with regards to recognizing the most important thing, which was making sure the quarterback had a better infrastructure around him. Came a little bit, I think, at the expense of the defense. That's how it is, the NFL, right? Like, if you don't draft well, and they haven't, outside of Sweat, you just don't have a lot of like young, exciting players. So
Yeah.
that's obviously going to be a big project probably for next year. But Denard Wilson, their defensive coordinator, pretty up against it.
Yeah.
From a
Best of
talent.
luck. Best of luck,
Who do
Bernard.
you think is? I mean, it's funny because the Jags were actually way worse statistically, but they at least have those edge rushers.
Yeah. I mean, I just based on the corners for the Titans in the secondary, I feel like this is probably the worst unit. Um, I, I will say I appreciate the level of physicality and the effort that the unit showed last year. Like I think they played team defense. Like they rallied to the football. They not too many like big mental mistakes. I just think from a talent standpoint, this team is just deficient on this unit. So I'd probably say the Jags are a little better off, but I don't know how big that kind of gap is.
Well, that brings me to the final ranking.
Yeah,
I feel like we're gonna have the same first and the same fourth team.
yeah,
Second and third, I think, could go either way, though. Where are you personally?
yeah.
Where are you landing? 1, 2, 3, 4 AFC South.
Yeah, so one, I think the Texans are obviously the clear cut favorite in this division. I think rightfully so. I just think from the defensive standpoint, and then quarterback, skill position, coach, like top down, they're the
Yeah,
best in this division. Two, I'm actually going to go with the Colts. Surprisingly, I just I'm optimistic the Jaguars offense can kind of make up for their defense, and I
yeah,
think Cohen can turn Trevor Lawrence hopefully to a better version than what we've seen over the past few years. But I just think the Colts roster, top to bottom, is
better.
better. I think there's better talent on the both sides of the line of scrimmage. I like the Colts playmakers. And again, like I know Daniel Jones isn't, we're not super excited about him, but there could be a path where he's average. And I think if he's average, the Colts are just a better team than the Jags. So then third, I'll go Jags. And fourth, I'll go Titans. And again, I think Titans fans just hope your rookies progress, show growth, and I think that's a win.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you. I like to do the pod first and then think it through. And I think
Yeah.
just talking about the Jags defense convinced me of the Colts. And talking about the Colts defense, I mean, they have like actual like good to great players at every level. I really believe.
Yeah.
The corner group. I mean, we mentioned Ward, but like you got Jalen Jones, Juju Brents. Like, there's just better players. The safeties are good now. Like, I like Luana Rumo. I don't think they're going to be a force by any
No.
means. I don't think either side of the ball they're going to be a top 10 unit. But I think it's definitely possible for the Colts that both sides of the ball could at least be above average. Whereas it's very hard for me to see the Jags defense getting there. I think the Jags offense could get there, but the defense just has such a long way to go. So yeah, and then the Titans, we've kind of laid it out. I think, yeah. All right. Well, that has been the AFC South. That was the last division preview. If you're listening to this and you're wondering, I'd like to hear you talk about another team. Go back and check. We've done every single division. Probably be listening to this and be like, why aren't they talking about the Vikings? Go back. I've done every division. I'll put them all out. Once again, you can watch them on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, my television podcast with David Dennis Jr., we have a new episode coming out tomorrow where we're recapping episodes 1 through 3 of Alien Earth. Have you watched this, Brentley?
No, I haven't. What's it on? Is it on
It's on
streaming?
FX.
FX?
FX,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
It's on
No,
Hulu. You can watch it on Hulu.
I'm currently watching The Wire, trying to watch that for the first time. So
Dang.
that we'll
Season
see.
1?
Season 1, yeah. I just got to
Wow.
a good part, so we'll see if I can continue to get into it.
Wow. What a time to rewatch The Wire.
Yeah.
I think we did The Wire during pandemic. Not the entire series, but some of the seasons. Well, Godspeed. I'm jealous of you that you're on that journey. Alien's very good though. You should check it
Okay.
out, especially
All
if you
right.
like sci-fi or horror.
I love sci-fi.
Well, then go. It's you can check it out. Viewer discretion is the name of the pod. Please go download, subscribe, etc. Thank you, as always, to my friends at Omaha Productions who work on this show: Kirsten Sebecki, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashin. And next week, I will be back again with the twice a week, but the team draft with Mike Golick Jr. The annual team draft is here. So that's always a fun episode. We will draft every NFL team, and also we will announce who won last year.